Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our Sunday afternoon Meet the Atheist segment. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Nidemos, the animated atheists, aka Niddy. How are you doing, man?
I'm great. Yeah, it's a good morning.
Yeah, nice to meet you. I've been watching a couple of your streams. Very interesting.
Yeah, I am something else, huh?
Yeah, no, it's always great to meet new young people coming up, and having this just clarity of thought about the big con.
The big something. Depends on where you go, I guess.
Yeah. Like I mentioned to you earlier, here in Africa, we grow them wild.
Ooh.
Mind you, we also just get a very biased, one-sided view of, religion in the States via the news that we consume here, so
right. Yeah.
It might not necessarily be quite as outlandish and weird as we
No, it's not. Yeah, it's really not. Again, depends on where you go.
Yeah, I guess. It's strange. It seems to me the closer you get to the equator, the crazier it gets.
Oh, it's melting our rational decision making.
Yeah, it's like we always get these impressions of those fire-breathing Southern Baptist preachers, and then in the North, they seem to be a bit more temperate.
Maybe. That's why, no, yeah. There's whack noodles everywhere in this country. It's really hard to sort it all out.
Yeah, you get. So
we're so big too. So
exactly. It's like, I don't think we fully grasp the size. I mean, like, we've got one time zone in our entire country from east to west. Mm-hmm. That's it. Yeah. I don't think we can fully comprehend the scale of it unless you've like spent 24 hours traveling from east to west.
It's crazy here.
Yeah. So, let's jump straight into it. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about your journey away from faith. So could you just run us through a little bit of your religious background? Did you grow up in a religious house? What was it like?
Yeah. So in terms of like the religious experience of the average like Caucasian American, I was on the lower end of like religious involvement as a kid. My parents were just kind of ambivalent towards it. My mom was raised Catholic and had a lot of guilt, and then eventually would just drag us to church when it was like necessary or like culturally appropriate, right? Like Christmas, Easter kind of thing. And I grew up with this sense that even if God was real, like he's kind of a dick, because I had like all kinds of like social trauma, family trauma, and things like that made it hard for me to believe in the first place. But then I went off to a Christian college because they gave me like a half-ride scholarship. I got very lucky. And after that collegiate experience and looking at, people my age studying religion and into it, right, I was fascinated by it. And then I left college and ended up in a home Bible study kind of atmosphere with a bunch of people my age, like in college or post-college. And just that social engagement and that sense of like community and joint ideology really intoxicated me to be like, ooh, like maybe there's something to this. Maybe this could actually be true, right? And seeing people really devoted to something that they believed was impactful and meaningful and not stupid about it. Like, oh, we just believe, right? No, they're like, let's look at Greek words. Let's like, talk about like different interpretations and like, why do you think this? And it's like, ooh, this is flashy. This is cool. It appealed to my intellect, right? And so not only were they appealing to me emotionally, they were appealing to my intellect. So I eventually received Jesus when I was 23, or 22, 23. And then for the last 12 years, I was a part of a non-denominational evangelical church where I would try to give people the message of Christ. I taught small Bible study groups. I did discipleship meetings. I led, men's groups, tried to do different youth group and ministry programs and things like that. So yeah, I went from not very religious to curious,
super religious.
whammo. Like I wanted to become a Sunday morning preacher, basically, right? From your guys' perspective, right? But for me, it was more like I wanted to be like cool American youth pastor guy. Right? Again, more stereotypes for your audience. Right. So like I took like bunches of theological classes for just hours and hours and hours so I could get that leadership training, as it were, to like be fully equipped for the ministry, right? And so yeah, that's my religious background. And then the pandemic here in America, seeing the rapid spread of misinformation, and not just misinformation, but the cultural and social experience of Christian pluralism within the pandemic, right? So people adopting the historical events of, COVID-19 and the 2020 presidential election, and mapping those onto their religious experiences really opened me up to thinking, now wait a minute. All these things are happening so quickly. People can fact check themselves. We're at a breadth of information that's unprecedented, and yet they have this fundamental religious narrative that contradicts my lived experience and my assessment of the evidence. And we're talking like gaps of weeks, months. When over here, I have this holy book where I'm like, oh, the Gospels being a few decades. Yeah, that's totally accurate. This is fine. So I've got two different standards, right? I've got this standard that says, you ought to believe something that's well attested, well evidenced in a close proximity to the events, right? And I don't hold this credulity for my own holy text. What's the deal, right? And then I started praying for things like, because I could see that inconsistency in my epistemology and my trust in how to evaluate reality. And I was like, God, give me a manuscript that's even closer, right? Give us something that we can date and historically pinpoint, the resurrected Jesus into, the Roman province of Israel or whatever. Please. No, silence, radio silence, right? And so then I was in like the atheist, like skeptic YouTube algorithm, right? I call it algorithmic atheism. I have a video about it where as you progress through consuming different voices and content, YouTube will kind of pull you along into a different current of
they'll tailor the content to your searches and what you view.
And exploring that opened me up to then hearing like, what are the detractors to my faith traditions and beliefs saying? And not only that, but what are the other like top Christian channels saying and doing and believing? And I'm like, wow, I don't agree with anyone. What position should I take? Hey God, you got any thoughts on this one? No?
Radio silence.
Yeah. Go back to being Catholic? No, not that. How about back to my church? No. Oh. So I gave up. I just one day realized like I don't really believe in Jesus as a Messiah figure anymore.
Right.
And then
so was there like a specific linchpin, or was it just like a gradual process?
It was a bit more of a process. I think like seeing the flaw in my epistemology was like the biggest like push toward out. and then looking into like, you know, the critical things about like the flood, the conquest narratives, the Old Testament, and then as you dig deeper, and it takes a lot more work to get to this kind of like, that's like what I like to call like the popcorn level of like skepticism and atheism and detracting like anti-evidence, right? But then like you've got your like what do I want to call it, like diamond level stuff, right, where you got to like do the work and find like, here's what like first century Jews were thinking around the time of the authorship of the Gospels. Here's what other cults were springing up at the same time as or before Christianity. And that a lot of that stuff is not easily accessible or studied in the West. And so you have to like develop connections with scholars of the ancient Near East, and then let the algorithm help you find like what kind of texts and searches should I be doing to get this better comparative analysis of these religious beliefs, and then getting access to those like translated texts and things like that. And as soon as I started seeing that, I was like, okay, I'm just done. Like, I'm out. Like, there's nothing special about Christianity. It just really got lucky.
Yeah. It's true. It's almost like, you know, if you think of it in terms of evolution, Christianity was the animal that was just living in the perfect environment to flourish. You know, it was
really
it had so many things going for it, and you know, you can also build in a little bit of expansionism and a violent tendency in there, and there you have Christianity spreading like a plague. Any specific organization or person that that influenced you, or was this all an inside job? YouTube.
Well, it's funny. Like, it really is YouTube, though. Like, and it's not just things like the existence of the atheist experience, or you know, cosmic skeptic, or genetically modified skeptic, or rationality rules, and all those folks, right? It's not just the existence of them. It's the existence of people like Kay Nash and Catherine Crick and Troy Black and and Capturing Christianity and Trinity Radio and you know, John MacArthur. Like, I just listed, you know, 8 or 9. Oh, and then I've got this other guy, Jamie Russell, who's like this tiny little creator, right? But they're all from such vehemently disagreeing faith traditions, but all sincerely believe that they have the Holy Spirit and they're doing God's work, right? And when you are just really honest with yourself and you're trying to hear them out and figure out, like, is Christianity true? No, I don't want you to do that. I want you to say, is a lived experience, a consistent lived experience of Christianity true? And you're not going to find it. You just won't. Right. And there's people that think that their take, their interpretation, their experience, their feelings about this, basically, or their particular analysis of the evidence is the one, right? And I could pray till I'm bluer than this shirt, and we're gonna get radio silence on this show. I guarantee it. So it's really YouTube democratizing the spiritual conversation and debate that influenced me the most. No book, no one person in particular. It's the existence of all of them together. Now, I will say that atheist and skeptic cartoons are extremely good because they help depersonalize and take away from that weight of, like, oh, I disagree with a human about this. You know? It's like, ha ha ha, we can laugh at the satire and you know, it's like think about the content of what's being said rather than dark matter.
Dark matter. And what's the other one? Sight in Atheist. That's also it's also a good one.
I really like theremin trees.
I don't know. I never quite took to it. I don't know why, you know. Any case, no, but I mean, it's, you know, it's a very common experience that you're referring to. You know, like, no, it's very seldom that there is an atheist that remembers, like, oh fuck, it was on the 5th of December
Right.
2007 at 5 p.m. It just dawned on me that this is all bullshit.
Hmm.
It's like a gradual process of letting go. And I sometimes compare it to like people having an experience of grief, because it's a loss. It's really a very significant part of you that you lose, but it only happens in reverse, like, because it's like a gradual, like when you lose somebody to death, like it's an instant shock and then it gradually dissipates. But with religion, it's in reverse, like you start having these niggling doubts, and it's like, I even remember as a child going like, this is bullshit. what you talking about?
Yeah, it's
but
it's
everybody
a ride.
around me was doing it, and everybody around me was buying into it. So I obviously just jumped onto the same bandwagon. But it's a very common experience, is that gradual. It starts off like a stone in your shoe. Like at first it's just niggling, and then after a while it's unbearable. You have to take the shoe off.
It's like an anti-cumulative case, right? You'll hear things on like Christian apologetics channels like, it's a cumulative case of belief. Well, I hate to tell you, if a lot of your cumulative case isn't very good, maybe the case is a little corrupt or a little imperfect there, buddy. So yeah.
I always love. I think what was the movie where it was Jack Nicholson that did it. I can't remember the title of it. Where he says like, "You can't handle the truth."
Few Good Men.
Few Good Men. Yeah, that's it.
That's a great movie. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great movie. So besides, obviously, when it comes to, I don't know, people always say, atheists are some of the most outspoken, or evangelical in their approach almost, and for myself, it's just, I cannot believe that I was caught up in this web of lies for so long, so that now that I have actually emerged free from it, I have this innate desire to actually open the eyes of other people as well, and it's not that people are fervorous or evangelical or whatever it is. I think it's like the humanitarian or the humanist side of us that just wants to let other people in on this as well. And I mean, for me, it's like, if people don't actually care about it, that's fine. Just go about your life, live your life, whatever.
Yeah.
Go pray to baby Jesus. I don't care. But as soon as you start telling me what baby Jesus wants me to do, that's when we're going to start having a problem, so.
Right.
But in terms of like activism, is there, besides YouTube, anything else that you're involved in? I mean,
I criticize apologists on Twitter sometimes. I get snarky on there. But then I also, so one of the things that I do during my workday actually is I'll go to coffee shops or places on campus, OSU campus, Ohio State campus, and I'll have a whiteboard that I take with me. And on it, I write, "It's best to be an atheist in 2022," or whatever year it's going to be. Let's chat. And I get mixed, receptions of this thing, right? I find that the people who sit and talk to me are the kinds of people who start YouTube channels about their particular beliefs. That's how I would probably state that, right? They're people that are convinced enough of their position to want to engage the other side, or at least, propagate their beliefs, right? Most of the time, like the shyer folks or like the more reserved people or unconfident individuals will take a tacit look, at the sign and just be like, okay, then. or they'll just be like, oh. But then I get students or young people that come up and go, I love it. That's great. Like, can I take a picture of that? So maybe I'm turning into some kind of Ohio meme. I don't know. But
you should actually, do something like what Anthony Magnabosco does.
Well, okay, so I'll get to that. That's
Yeah,
partly the inspiration for it is the street epistemology kind of thing.
yeah,
But
yeah,
the um the other thing that happens is um I'm hoping to make like little dents, right? And be that
yeah,
pebble for some of these like young people, right?
exactly.
I've talked to Muslim young people, I've talked to um what are they called? Pentecostals, um, Catholics, that
Mm,
are just so convinced and want to, keep their belief structure going and, show off
yeah,
how much they know and figure out, why I would have such a sign like this.
yeah,
But I have yet to have had like a negative confrontational experience. And I hope it's because I smile, and I hope
mm,
it's because I'm trying to show them like, look, I understand a lot about your religion and your beliefs. I'm not
yeah,
just doing this because I had a bad experience or whatever. And also, like, my goal in that is to bring a smile to the face of atheism, right? To
yeah,
show people like people who don't believe what you believe are trying
mm,
to be rational. They're trying to be
yeah,
productive members of society. They give a shit about you,
yeah,
and I'm not just doing this to be mean, right? Or say like you're dumb, like, because you're
yeah,
not, because I believed like you maybe for over a decade,
yeah,
so it's
yeah.
okay.
But this is something that's very heartening. Is seeing this wave of young people, just putting a face to the movement, and it's really being normalized to the extent where almost every single person knows at least one or two atheists in their
Hmm.
circles.
Yeah.
And I think that is it's a step in the right direction, because it's difficult to be, it's easy to be angry and suspicious and judgmental about something that you haven't put a face to it. But as soon as you
Yeah.
put a
Hmm.
human face, and you can relate, a human's experience within something, it becomes far harder to judge and criticize and demonize, that group of people.
Hmm.
Um, so what fuels what fuels Niddy at the end of the day, like, what are you passionate about?
Well, on my channel, I'm passionate about showing how frustrating and culty my former church was. So that's one thing
Right,
that gets me going. I could get into that if you want. And
yeah,
then
give
the
us a
other
rundown.
thing is, well, I will in a minute. And then the other thing is having a place for people who believe or don't believe to engage me and, give me their case. Um, but also to like be understood, right? Like maybe I have some weird interaction with my former church. I'm actually supposed to go to their like Thanksgiving, Friendsgiving evangelistic efforts like in a week, right? And I'll probably report on that and how it went and the things we talked about and stuff like that. And letting people kind of into that experience is something I'm passionate about too. Like,
Mm,
here's what it's like to leave one of these groups, but also be in their like social network, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
then, if I have like something that was like triggering or frustrating, right? Or maybe really positive, you know, there may be culty issues with that church, but if there's still positive social things happening despite
yeah,
that, I want to give them that too, right?
yeah,
And
a fair shake,
be
yeah,
yeah, yeah, and it's like it's not it's not necessarily the people that are bad. It's a lot of their ideas and how they use them, or
mm,
they use the holy book to um,
mm,
misinform or pressure people, right?
yeah,
That's what I have the issues with. But so yeah, my former church was a particularly controlling and demanding atmosphere, especially for young people, and they put you into double binds, as it were, or like what's the word? There's like a word for this or a term for this. It's like motivate. It's like a way of forcing you into like a decision, like a coercive, and you're like there's so much like social cost or like also
yes,
like
yes,
real bound decision making, right? So like
right,
basically like if you don't move into this house of 10 or 11 people your age, which is made for like 5 people. If you don't move into this house, you lack the faith to let God use you in this place, right? Or you must not want to be, broken or sacrifice your autonomy, right?
Well, it
And then,
sounds very BDSM to me.
but yeah, and then if you're not willing to sacrifice your autonomy, right, that means you have too much pride or whatever. And
Yeah,
then, like,
always a
once you
guilt
do
trip.
it, once you do move into the house, well, it's like, we want you to like come to these 3 meetings a week. That's like part of a requirement of living here. But your cost of living is extremely low. It's
Mm.
subsidized by like the sheer number of people that live there. But then they're going to say things like, hey, you can't have a job that overlaps your meeting times, right? Your spiritual meeting times, because you got to be involved in the community to live in the house. But if you are less involved in the community, then you can't really afford to live anywhere else because they've restricted your work hours, right? So you're stuck staying
Damned if you do,
plugged
damned if
into
you
their
don't.
system. Yeah. And if you start getting more hours that overlap with the meeting times, right, on top of being in college, which is what most of these kids are faced with, then you could lose your place of living. So yeah, it's like you want to promote. I think that is one of the most infantilizing and bound decisions and coercion methods that needs to go, because young people in America need to be able to develop those skills of paying their bills, of being
Mm.
able to be alone, um, and being able to manage their responsibilities rather than being like coerced into like a particular pattern and having things handed to them.
Yeah.
It's just going to make for childish and frustrated and economically disadvantaged people later on.
Exactly. You'll never learn independence, and
No.
if you live in that kind of an environment, because
Yep.
it sounds very codependent.
Hmm. Yeah, and you're normalized into thinking that like every decision I make is everyone else's decision too, in a way, right? Like I remember saying things like, um, or there's like rhetoric that's like, we use James chapter, I think 4, to be like, who are you to say where you go and make money? You should ask the Lord where he's planted you. By the way, that's with us. Right? You don't go to college anywhere else. Don't take a job outside of this spiritual community, because this is where God is. This is where God has placed you, right? So
Yeah.
I as a web developer could never take a job a couple hours away,
Mm.
because God forbid that he can't find more Christians for me, right, to hang out with. No, it's these ones. How am I supposed to question the divine? But then if my wife has a miscarriage, oh, it's a fucking mystery. We don't know what God wants with this. We know what God wants this
Who
time,
is?
but not all those
I
other
don't know. I don't
times.
remember who was it that says,
Sorry if I'm not supposed to swear that
I
much on the channel.
distrust those who know so very well what God wants them to do. I don't. It was like some influential woman somewhere along the lines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But
That's crazy.
you get it, right? Like where it's
Yeah,
like we
completely.
really, really know the mind of God when it's convenient. But then
Exactly.
it's just a blummin'
Yeah.
mystery when it's serious.
It's like that meme going around like, pastor needs a house. Let's pray. You need no, pastor needs a house. Let's donate. You need a house. Let's pray.
For sure, yeah. Totally that.
That's
That's
crazy.
great. I like that one. I'm gonna use that later.
So, tell me, on a serious note,
Hmm.
it's we laugh about this, reflecting on the journey that we've been through, but religion has got some very serious consequences and negatively impacts a lot of people's lives. And I mean, we're not talking about the obvious things like people being forced to wear hijabs and burqas their entire lives, and people getting locked up in cult environments. But I mean, I'm more about the insidious aspect of it, where Religion always teaches you that, you are worthless. You live in constant fear of this celestial supervision, as Hitchens put it. And there's a lot of unrealistic expectations as well that it puts on people. If you could maybe reflect on your experience with that.
Yeah. So in my like deconversion process, it was like a lot of it was, or the most difficult parts were a lot seeing myself in gray terms, right? Because I have like a particularly like scrupulous personality, which means like if there's like an authority in my life that has criticism, I judge myself on that criticism in black and whiteness, right? Like make a mistake, I'm all bad. Yeah. Do something awesome, I'm freaking amazing, right? But less that, more of the first one, right? Like if I make mistakes, it's over. Like crucify me. Yeah. Or I do that to myself mentally, right? And it's not productive. And it's all the more fueled by thinking things like you have this broken nature, right? There's this inexorable, inalienable feature of your being that just will never go away, and it's always bad, and it just maybe it won't ever change, and you just have to deal with that. Pray 3 times, and then God's like, my grace is sufficient for you. Okay, I don't want to do anything about that. Okay. It's like, okay, fine. Oh, well, but then like, being involved in going to like different forms of like secular counseling and being like, no, you don't need to see yourself that way. You can live a productive and meaningful life without seeing yourself as all bad or all good, right? There's certain things you do that are maybe less productive, or that was bad. That doesn't meet anyone's goals. That was stupid, right? Or it was, cheating or lying or whatever. But there's a lot of good potential that you have, and a lot of other good aspects to your life that show you that you're not just this, polarized figure. And I think Christianity in particular is just guilty of inculcating that kind of black and white thinking, where like this decision is all bad, this decision is all good, and if you're leaning one towards the other, it's indicative of your like spiritual state, right? You're either progressing in your relationship with God or regressing, right? Like there's no middle ground with God, okay? Like you're either for Jesus or against him, right? There's lots of polemical stuff that you can easily access, or polarizing, I should say, from the Bible, right? Where it's like, it's one or the other, guys. Like you don't get to be some middle, tertiary being. So that's one thing. And then the other stuff is like just purity culture in a sense, where it's like the idea of me one-on-one talking with a female I'm not married to that's my age. It's like you're kind of given this picture in evangelical America that as a man, you're this ravenous beast that could screw anything at any moment. If only the opportunity presents itself, you're just gonna lose it. Your pants are gonna fly off.
Like a bunch of cats in heat.
Yeah. It's like, what? Like, and that's like hardly at like it's like people imagine that like the Jerry Springer episode is going to happen to them, or some like heated movie affair is going to happen in like a week. And it's like, no, that's not the lived experience of most of the fundamentalists anyway. Right. Sure. You might get, the hots and your trots, but like, you don't have to like act on that, and you probably won't. You're not really that, vicious, ravenous sex beast that you think you are. And deconstructing that and realizing like we're grown-ups, right? We're grown-up humans. We can talk about sex with people. Not that we want to have it with them, but we can just talk about sensitive and difficult issues with other grown adults. And it's not a big deal. Like, and you can do it one-on-one, and you're not going to want to bone because you talked about something personal, or you might develop some feelings, but you can measure those feelings with the rest of your lived experience and be like, look, I don't want to sleep with this person, even though we're deeply connecting, because I have, you know, a spouse that I really trust, and a spouse
Yeah.
and a family that I really enjoy, and I don't want to hurt that either, right? And
Yeah.
purity culture doesn't allow for that. It's like you
No.
can only have this spiritual and emotional and communal bond with one person, right?
That's very strange, because technically primates are not monogamous, and
Right.
B, I think it's it's a bit of an evolutionary remnant as well, that we tend to go more towards this monogamous society. But I diverge. Like the point that was really the forefront in my mind when you were talking was just this idea of purity culture, and how it's not only the Abrahamics, like it's almost every single religion, the sexuality of women, and it just
Yeah.
fills in with this refulgence of, they I don't know why it's something that's to be feared. And it creates this culture, like you say, of people who feel ashamed and guilty for being human, while it's part of human nature. It's very damaging to a person's psyche as well. I remember very vividly as a young child feeling so ashamed, and guilt tripped by the religion that I grew up in, and I thought that, what's wrong with me? Like, why am I, why am I the, this debased, filthy being, like, but it's just normal. It's like a normal expression of your, being a human being. It's crazy. Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, if you want to see the harm that religion does, you can just cast your eyes east and look to this continent. It's
that's why I really like Afro-Humanist, Esther's channel.
Yeah.
And then, while I was deconverting too, I'm like, whoa, this is what Christianity's doing over there. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. No, it's crazy, and it's this is why I'm so passionate about like focusing on African issues, especially because an African atheist, especially a Black African atheist, is it's rare. It's a very very rare occurrence, but it's they're growing in numbers, and this is also part of our mission, here at the Atheist Republic in South Africa, is just to create that space and create that environment where people can be free to come and speak their minds, find like-minded people, and I think as long as we create those spaces, things will just naturally evolve and develop and follow their course. Now we talked about reflecting on on the past and everything. So if you could at this point reach out to young Niddy, reach out and touch young Niddy and say, get out of there. Yeah, I mean, like, I would always, if I could reach my former self, I would firstly critical thinking, and just that would be the first thing I would want to teach myself as a young adult. I don't know if it's the same for you, or if you have other ideas.
I think it would be more so of, I think I would tell myself, listen to your sense of the problem of the pluralism here.
Yeah.
And then go back into history and look at that in relationship to Hellenized Judaism, right? Before you really decide that Jesus is the way, truth, and life, go do this. Here's 3 things: that the text of Philo, the Essenes, and the Scroll of Melchizedek, and read those, and then come to look at your conclusions now, right? Yeah, I would give myself those 3 texts, and then ask myself to sit down, compare them, and then understand that all 3 of them, and then the Bible next to it, all 4 of those things reach different conclusions about, like, Messiah belief and things like that. And hopefully not join a Christian cult.
Exactly.
Yeah. And being like, look, people are doing this today around the country and it. Like, don't deny that. And they did it back then too.
Yeah.
They were constantly trying to craft a narrative that made sense for them to maintain their sense of relationship to their God.
Yeah. For me, I would, if I could reach back, I would just say to myself, there are other religions. The second I realized that, they can't all be true at the same time, but they can all be wrong at the same time. That was it for me. I was done. I was out. I was like, this is some bullshit.
Well, I think though there's a when it's almost like this social Pascal's wager that kind of goes on with young people, especially in America, where it's like, it's not whether or not you believe or don't believe. It's not whether or not it's as long if you believe in something, you're automatically like on like a level higher, or you have more acceptance than if you don't believe anything, and you get all these other benefits like community and things like that.
There's social capital. There's definitely social capital involved.
You get tons of social capital, and then like, because you've grown up likely with a lot of that social capital, or that social capital being viewed as also a good thing, your decision making is almost bounded again in a way towards some kind of Christendom. It doesn't even matter what it is, right? If you have some of it, then you get like, okay, like even the Catholics will be like, you're Protestant, but at least you got Jesus, right? And the Protestants are like, you're Catholic, but at least you got Jesus. Like, there's like this bargaining thing that where we go, fine, you won't kill us tomorrow, right? Like,
unless you live in Ireland.
At least you're not Muslim, right? Like, and then, but then even the Muslims were like, well, it's a secular society and we're trying to be at peace with everyone. Okay, at least you want God in your life, but those atheists,
amazing.
Hang on.
Yeah, Nydia, I want to thank you so much for waking up early and spending your time with us. It's been really great, and like I said, I found you on YouTube, and I was just like going, yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
So in conclusion, I just tell people where they can find you on social media, and I'll also post the links in the description of this video when we put it on YouTube.
Great. Oh, we're recording this. Okay, got
it. We actually live in 3 cities at the moment. So we in Cape Town, Joburg, and I believe Durban. I might be mistaken.
Excellent.
So we've got 4 consulates across South Africa, 4 major cities.
Nice.
And then what we do is we go live in the Facebook group so that we can give our members chance to interact with our guests, and then afterwards we stream it via StreamYard to YouTube.
Nice.
I'm also a cat person.
This is you decided to take a visit, but no, so I'm on YouTube. I'm Nidemos, the Animated Atheist. Small channel, but I try to have open rooms at least once a week. For people to hop in and express, what they believe or what they've been feeling or what's going on in our, skeptic community. Like this past week, I had, 2 very different Christians come on along with Pine Creek, right? And
I saw Pine Creek was on your
Pine Creek
channel.
Doug, yeah. So I sometimes appear on Pine Creek or Digital Gnosis, if you guys are familiar with those channels. And on Twitter, I'm Godless Nidemos. And those are the primary ways to find me. I'm more than happy to have like one-on-one interviews too. I try to expose my community and people who engage my content to other people that I find interesting or who have reached out to me or have valuable assets. Like I had Dr. Joshua Bowen, author of the Atheist Handbook of the Old Testament, on Wednesday or Thursday. on my channel. He just happened to pop in when I did a lunch stream.
Yeah.
I've had Captain Dad.
He's incredible. I mean, he's so knowledgeable and incredibly generous with his time. So
I was swooning. I was like, oh. But I've had Captain Dad.
You can sense intelligence when it comes off a person. Like it's weird. I don't know. It's just like you can really tell that man studied a lot of shit.
Though I do want to plug in particular on my channel too a playlist and a video. I have my playlist, Dear Dwellians, which is my personal address to my culty church. And you can kind of get into how they think and how I thought as the type of Christian I was. And maybe that could be really informative for a lot of your listeners as to like, we're not the book burning whack noodles, but we're like this like mental anguish and social contract nightmare. Right. And then what did I call that? That video. Hang on. I have a video called, it's a stream I did like a month ago called Compilation Christ. And I view that stream as probably like my primary magnum opus, right, of what the conclusions I kind of reached about like Jesus and belief structures and messianic conclusions from the like 1st century BC through like up to about the 2nd century AD. And that it's kind of going through like all the texts and slices in very brief slivers.
That sounds amazing. You should just drop me an email with all the links to your socials, and I'll put it in the description.
And also on that one, there's this neat free timeline application online that I use to like position all the people who wrote and things like that. So it's handy.
One of my favorite websites was I mean, it's pointless to confront Christians with these contradictions, where it says A in this chapter and B in that chapter, because they've been tap dancing around this for like centuries.
Right.
But to view the whole thing in its entirety, it looks like it's just this web of interlinked contradictions. I don't know if you've seen.
It's not so much contradictions as it is like it's a web of things that are influencing and creating the narrative that we have today. That when you actually, jump in the TARDIS and get back in there and get in between those events and see the gaps, you're like, whoa, there's something fishy going on here. But our brains as humans, but I like to frame it as we as humans, we condense things down to sizable chunks and we create what are called heuristics for remembering things. And we're doing that, but with like hundreds of years of history and anecdotes and, retellings and reformulations of beliefs. Right. And we can't, I don't think we should do that anymore. So that's, there you go. That's me. That's how I think and what I'm up to.
Yeah. Amazing. Again, just thank you so much for your time on Sunday morning for you. And we'll see you out there.
Yes. Thank you.
Take care.
Peace.